I just
May-
put my
you might-
employee ID. Well,
Yeah.
I think I made mine up, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I think you're supposed to use your DataTel ID.
Okay. Data film, Jesus. All right, no problem.
Okay, everybody. Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And I am now recording this session so that we will be able to go back to look at it if you have any questions in the future about using Focus2Career in our IttS courses, in our Introduction to the Schools courses. If you are still creating a student account, that's totally fine. At some point, though, just make sure that that you focus on what's happening now. We can always get you up to speed with creating an account later. There'll be plenty of time for that. Thanks again for being here. I'm hoping everybody's safe and healthy and all your families are doing okay. And so today, this session is going to last about an hour and a half. Most of it is going to be run by our awesome colleagues who are in the academic advisement team, and they are going to teach us how to use Focus2 and also teach us what it's all about, right? So we're going to start with the conceptual why. Why do we use this tool? It's a brand new tool at RCC. And then specifically the technical part, how do students use it? How do we use it as teachers in a more administrative capacity? And then we are going to move forward and talk about how it fits into the course. Okay, how it fits into this Intro to the Schools course. So that's our agenda. We'll start with some reminders. You're going to meet your trainers. We'll talk about the why and how of Focus2, and then we'll specifically talk about how to use it in the course. If at any point you have questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat. You are welcome to raise your hand and unmute if you'd like. That's perfectly fine. So don't be afraid to ask questions. So just a couple reminders before we get started with our training on Focus2 specifically. Just remember, all sections of the IttS course are going to use the same textbook. And if you were with us on June 2nd, you learned a little bit about that. You'll also learn more about that in the training next week, okay? That textbook is an open educational resource published by Lumen Learning. It's called a College Success text. And that text will be supported using the software Waymaker to promote student engagement. So our first training session on June 2nd was about how to use Waymaker. If you missed that session, please stay tuned for how to make up that training, okay? The deans and I are meeting tomorrow. We'll know more later this week about how exactly we plan to have people make up any training that they missed. That session on Waymaker was recorded, so if you did attend, you'll be able to have access to that recording, and we will also get those who did not attend access to the recording as well. One additional training session will be offered on June 30th, that's next Tuesday. In that training session, which I'll be leading, we'll focus on classroom activities to supplement the text. So we'll take a closer look at the text and we'll talk about what to do in the classroom or some ideas for what to do in the classroom to supplement what your students are learning about in the text, okay? So before we have Christina, Lori, and Christina take it away, are there any questions right now at this particular moment?
not here. Nope.
Okay, fantastic. Well, if you come up with something, please let us know. I am going to stop sharing this. And I am going to share now Christina Chaudel, who's one of the advisors in the School of Arts and Humanities, and she also teaches in the Performing Arts Department. She was hoping to be with us today. Unfortunately, she can't be with us, so she made a video to help us learn about Focus2. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to share that. And I'm also going to share my computer sound so that you can hear the video, but if you're having trouble hearing it, please let me know and put that in the chat and we'll try to figure that out. So just give me 1 second. Here we go. Okay, everybody can see the video, right? It's about to play. Okay, here we go.
Hi everyone, my name is Christina Chaudel. I am a Student Success Advisor with the School of the Arts and Humanities, and I am also a team member for the Focus2 implementation team. I do want to apologize, unfortunately, that I am not able to be with you all today for the Focus2 training session. Unfortunately, I have had a family emergency, and that has rendered me unable to be there with you all today. But if you have any questions about anything that comes up today in today's training session, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or to Christina Merriweather or to Lori Pearl, and we will be more than happy to help you as you all navigate through Focus2. Have a great day, and I hope you guys enjoy our training session today. Hello and welcome to this training session for how to use Focus2. When logging in, you will see a message notification here, just to let you know that you have new messages waiting on your administrative site, the administrative site, and the student site. If you haven't done so already, pop over to the student site to see all of the features that are available to our students. But for now, let's head over to the administrative site. On your main page, you will see information about upcoming webinar sessions. Please feel free to sign up for any of these webinars if you feel so. They are absolutely wonderful and extremely informative. For new students that are creating accounts, you will see an access code. This access code is incredibly important for new students that are creating an account. This will help them to basically be linked to our RCC account. If you were looking up a student individually, you would click on your users. Now, just as a heads up, our particular access is going to look a little bit different than yours, as we are full administrators and we have a variety of different tools that help us to really tailor RCC to Focus2. So just in case if you notice that there are certain features on your side that aren't on our side, that's the reason why. So when you are looking up a student individually, you would go into look up a user. Now you have a variety of different options as what you can do when you are looking up a student. I do find it beneficial if you do have to look up a student, you can look them up by last name. We don't use usernames when we're looking up a student. You won't be able to find anybody, but for instance, I'm going to be using one of our student workers. His name is Pedro. We're going to look him up so we can see his particular account. And as we can see that we do have two students with the last name Alarcon. And so for now, I'm going to use Pedro. On here, you can see groups, and we'll talk a little bit about groups in just a second. But the three groups that we have that we are using in Focus2 as of right now is if they're a full-time or part-time student, if they have a special POP that they're identifying with, and if they are a first-generation college student. It also gives us information as to when they added Focus2 and when the last time was that they used it. You also have the power to be able to delete a student's account as well. But for the time being, we'll also look up Pedro. But you also have the opportunity to look up any students under certain last names. So if you know that their last name begins with, let's say, an S, but you can't quite remember the spelling, you can definitely have a look and see. I know his last name begins with S, so let me go down. Oh, I see. Okay, it looks like, oh, Tyra Sullivan, that's who I was looking for. That way you can also access it from that way. But for now, let's look up Pedro. So here's Pedro's account, and what you can do is you can look and see all of Pedro's information. You can see the group identifiers that he's with, and you can see his activity at a glance to see, okay, well, what specifically has he completed and what has he not completed? You can also access a full portfolio report. And if there's specific things that you just want to look at very quickly, you can click on any of these individual ones. If you want to see a full report, you would click on Select All and click on Portfolio Report. This will now give you a complete portfolio report, so you can see how they scored, how they were assessed, and you can see, this is a very important thing as well here too with regards to academic strengths, especially if you do want to talk to certain students. You know, if you see that they are very strong in a particular area and they're still a little bit of unsure as to where they want to go, this might be a good conversation starter with them. You can see how career ready they are. You can see where their strengths and weaknesses sort of are lying. This particular assessment we'll use as an example here for work interest assessment. We have what they call a Holland code here, which I believe my teammates are actually going to explain a little bit more about that with you. and just a little bit of a breakdown of where their strengths lie within accordance to their Hollins codes. Now, under each assessment, they have occupations that match the results inside of that particular assessment. So I'm just going to utilize this first assessment, which is, let me just double check, work interest, yes. You can see which assessments, which occupations align with this particular assessment. They have particular positions that are laid out here. And what we've done here at RCC is we've actually loaded in our degrees as well. So a student can see, well, how would I be able to then take a degree at this particular college that will then help me down the road in this particular area. If you are looking to save this entire report, maybe you want to keep a record of it, you can download a PDF of their entire portfolio. You would just click on this little icon up here in the top right corner, and that will be you'll be able to then download a PDF. If we head back here to the back to Pedro's homepage here, you can also combine assessments, which is down here at the bottom. So say, for instance, you just want to get a sense of two assessments. Maybe you've had a conversation with Pedro and he really mentioned that, you know, work interest and skills seem to be the two that really resonated with him the most. And then you can also see, based on that, the types of degrees that would be associated then with these particular professions that do show up under work interest and skills. So when you combine the two, you can then see that there are six occupations that appear in both of these assessments. And then you can have a look and see, okay, well, these are the professions that showed up, and these are the types of degrees that we have at RCC that maybe you could, consider focusing in on. And then obviously to what they refer to as the job family, or where this particular profession would sit. So that way you can have a look and see. You can also create a PDF of this particular as well, so that you can save it to discuss with Pedro. So moving right along, now that's if you're looking up an individual. So I'm just going to head back to our dashboard area here. But say, for instance, now you have a group. Now with regards to that, we have what we call a aggregate report. Now the aggregate report will be where you'll be able to then run a full assessment of a particular group. So what you can do is you can go into completed modules. You can put in start and end dates. You can change all of that up. You can put in the type of user that they are, if it's active, what's completed, both completed and not completed for these active users. You can also click on all users, both active, inactive, and never used users, just to kind of get a sense of what your group has done. And then under where it says basic search, primary group only, you would go into the aggregate search, and you can select specific groups. Now this is where your IttS group would be listed in here. So when we create the IttS class list for you, you'd be able to then specifically select your group. And what you would do then is you would click on, so for instance, I'm going to just use veterans as an example right now. So we click on veterans, and you can sort it as well too by if there's a few selections that you want to make with a particular student that you're looking at. Maybe you want to see all of my full-time students in my class, what did they have to say? So you would do and. But for now, we're just selecting this one particular group, so it's totally fine to just select or. If you click on View Report, you'll get a full report. If you're looking to actually save it and you want to have a record of this as a spreadsheet, you would click on Create CSV. This would then be able to create a spreadsheet for you to be able to look at on your own. But for now, we'll click on View Report, and you'll be able to then see your students. So right now, these are the two people that we have that are veterans that have completed these particular Focus 2 assessments. And we can see what they've done. We can see when they added it. They can see when was the last time that they accessed it. Now, obviously, there's a lot of abbreviations in here, but if you go into the modules legend, it will break down what all these abbreviations are. So if you have students that have taken Focus 2, are in your class, and you've noticed that they haven't completed something specific in their Focus 2, you can address it with them and just say, hey, listen, I noticed that you haven't completed the skills assessment. If you could get to that, as it is part of your assignment, whatever the situation may be. But that way you can see what they've actually completed in Focus 2 for yourself. You also have an opportunity as well to be able to click on the student as well and basically look at their individual report and whatnot. Heading back over here to the dashboard. Another thing that we have in here that you also have access to are support materials. In support materials, this is where you'll actually find pre-recorded webinar sessions with regards on how to use Focus 2, both from an administrative standpoint, but also from a student's perspective. So in here under webinar recordings, you'll be able to see that Diane McCrudden, who is one of the creators here for Focus 2, she has these incredible webinars. So you do have an opportunity to sit down and watch some webinars. So just in case if there's something that maybe you forget from this particular training session, this is also a really, really good jumping off point for you to be able to head to. That's also really important to notice is that we do have a lot of students that have already created Focus 2 accounts before they've signed up for your class. We spoke with Diane McCrudden, and she actually offered us 2 solutions as to how we can actually add a student then to your IttS course. From an administrative standpoint, you would have to go manually into each student's account, and you can select grouping for them. Or you can have the student do it themselves. They would just need to edit their account details. If anything, I would probably suggest the easier method would be to have the student just to edit their account details and to be able to then select your course, which would then be listed under their groupings. That's also very important to note is that students do have the opportunity to upload documents into Focus 2. So I'm just going to show you that very, very quickly here. That's over in the student website. And it is located under My Professional Development. This is an incredibly useful tool for a lot of our students. It's an opportunity for them to be able to make notes. They can write about their objectives and goals. They can talk about any sort of internships that they've had. They can keep records of things, any sort of work experience, volunteer services. It's also really good too. They can keep a network of contacts in here as well that they could access. Maybe it was somebody that they worked with that said, hey, you're really great, make sure to keep my name and number, I'd love to hire you after graduation. That way students can keep records of those things to just continue to build up their network. Any sort of social networking or professional memberships that they're associated with, maybe they have a LinkedIn account, they can keep all of that together. But down here, this is one of the most important features down here. That's the resume, cover letter, and other documents option down here. Students will have an opportunity to be able to upload their documents. As administrators, you will be able to see those documents when you pull a full report for that particular student. So say, for instance, they have a resume that they would like for you to look over. They can absolutely upload it here into Focus 2. And you can have an opportunity to look over their resume, their cover letter, any other supporting documents that they may have. Everything just sort of sits into this one particular area. And both you as their professor, ourselves as student success advisors, we'd also be able to see, what they've worked on and if there's any other support that they may need with regards to those documents. So that pretty much wraps everything up here from our end. If there's any additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or my amazing team, Christina Merriweather and Lori Pearl, and we will be happy to help you with any and all questions that you may have with regards to Focus 2.
All right, thank you, everybody. And thank you, Christina. So I'm going to turn things over to Lori and Christina Merriweather now. Do you all need to share a screen as well?
Yes, I'd like to share my screen. I'm going to go next.
Perfect. Let me find you real quick and I will make sure you can do that. Here we go. Okay, you are a host, and you can now go ahead and share.
Thank you. Okay, good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Christina Merriweather. I'm a senior advisor in the Student Success Center, primarily working with the School of STEM. So what I'm going to do, I think Christina did a really great job of laying out a lot of what you can expect from admin access, but she also covered some of what the student is seeing as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through what the student side looks like. It doesn't look very, very different from the dashboard that Christina just showed you, but I'm really just going to give a quick overview of the different types of assessments and what you can potentially use those assessments for when having students complete this. Now, just as a reminder, students are actually, new students for the fall are actually being prompted to complete the Focus2 assessment at the point of acceptance. We do know that there's no way to mandate that they do it before moving on to registration. So of course, there may be some students that will get to you in your ITTS courses that haven't done it yet, but they have been notified that they should create an account and begin taking the assessments. And thankfully on the student success side, I know I've gotten emails from students in my caseload that are actually filling the assessments out, which is great. So that's really positive. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Okay. Is everyone able to see my screen? All right, perfect. Okay, so I've logged in as a student. If you remember, Christina showed you when you log in that you have the option to choose administrative access or student access. So I am logged in as a student. And so this is the dashboard that they are going to see. Again, you kind of saw this before with Christina's video. And so what students are doing, they're not being prompted necessarily to fill out any particular assessments at this time. They may do all of them. They may only do a few of them. The biggest things to think about is that students can retake these as much as they'd like. So as you can see, it says start over. You know, we realize that students may answer the questions very differently their first semester in college versus maybe their second semester or even halfway through the semester, right? And I know that part of the ITTS course is going to be having them really reflect on that initial time that they took the results to see if anything, they took the assessments to see if any of their results may change. And so with the career planning involvement, the academic strengths, and the Am I Career Ready assessments, these are kind of your foundational assessments. And so just to give you a quick overview, the My Career Planning involvement, this really helps to measure what a student, what their level of engagement has been up until this point in any career planning, what their comfort level is at this point. And so this is an assessment that I did. And so you can see here, you know, the questions are formed, you know, to what extent are you, you know, and then it gives you the prompts there. So you can see questions like making your career decisions based on the assessment of your talents. You know, are they thinking about that? They may feel that they have done little to no thought of, you know, careers based upon what they're actually good at, what they actually are passionate about. Maybe they've only just been told by their parents or others, you know, what their career decisions should be. So this really helps them to be thoughtful about how they've really engaged in the process, if at all, regarding career assessment or career planning. So you can see some of the questions here, you know, to what extent are you keeping aware of trends in the job market? And again, you know, students shouldn't be discouraged if they find that they're answering little to no extent here, right? I think it's a good baseline for them to think about, oh, I didn't really think about actually looking at the trends in my field or talking to people who are employed in career fields that interest me, right? And so again, it's more of to act as a baseline for the student to really start to think about, oh, well, maybe I'm not doing this, so I should. Or, you know, I've been doing all of this, great, I'm on track, right? And then of course, as instructors and, you know, as advisors that are on the call, you know, you have this information now to see where the student really needs to start. You know, if a student's like, nope, I'm on it. I've done shadowing, I've done internships, I have a resume, you know, that student is going to need different guidance from someone that answers a lot of these questions like, nope, haven't thought about that. Nope, didn't know you could do that, right? What is a resume? So this really gives you a good point of reference to where to start with a student. Okay. I'm going to go back to my dashboard. So my academic strengths. This is, I think, really helpful for a student that is just, maybe they're undecided. They're kind of like, I'm interested in a lot of things. I don't really know. So even just from choosing a program of study, they're just lost, right? Let alone the whole career planning and what kind of, you know, field would I want to go into as a professional. And so my academic strengths will allow for the student to take kind of an inventory and assessment of what are their academic strengths, you know, whether it was in high school, whether they've already been a semester in at RCC, you know, to what extent are they, you know, comfortable or feel that they're strong at art or business or English, engineering, right? And so the student can go through, they can click on, you know, what they kind of feel the most comfortable with. Okay. And now I'm going to just go to the results here. And so here it kind of drops those subjects then into different buckets. You know, I do very well in the following subjects. I do all right, you know, in the following subjects. And I never took this subject. So again, I really think this particular assessment is useful for a student that, you know, maybe one, they're just undecided and they really just don't even know where to start in selecting a major and selecting any kind of field to do research. And the other would be, you know, also the student that maybe they're in a major and they're like, I don't know if this is the right major for me. Like, what are maybe some other options that I hadn't thought about? Okay. The other foundational assessment, am I career ready? So this particular one actually follows the competencies of the National Association of Colleges and Employers. So this, I didn't actually take this one yet, but this kind of helps the student gauge, you know, and these standard practices or these competencies are tied to, you know, what are kind of the standard skills, experiences that baseline employers are looking for college graduates or, you know, newbies into the field to have competencies in. So, you know, critical thinking, teamwork, collaboration, technology, you know, leadership, and it allows for them, and I'll just kind of start the assessment just as a preview to the types of questions, you know, it'll take them through a series of questions to ask, you know, to what degree do these statements describe you? You know, are you someone that you make step-by-step plans to solve problems? You know, you can demonstrate originality and think creatively, because again, this is what employers are looking for, these types of skill sets. So you go through all of the modules, answer the questions, and then it'll kick out your results so that the student, again, is designed to be a baseline of this is kind of where I am right now. So if I were to go out on the job market right now, based upon the results of this particular assessment, you know, here are my chances probably for, you know, really being a heavy contender here. And so I think it's a good way to level set with students as well, especially those that are coming right out of high school, right? And they don't really have an idea of what the workforce is like or what employers or companies are even looking for in employees. Okay. So those are your sort of foundational assessments here. The self-assessments, which I won't go through all of them just in the interest of time, and I know Christina covered some of them when she looked at it from the admin side, but you know, the students can do a work interest assessment. So that assessment allows for, you know, the student to just think about what types of, not even thinking about titles of jobs for now, but like what particular type of work do they even enjoy? So I will just give a quick example here. Is, you know, it gives you more task-oriented questions. So, you know, to what degree would you enjoy designing graphic art images, working in a national park, designing theater stage sets, right? Because a lot of times students may know what kinds of activities they like to do, but they don't know how to package it into an actual position, right? Like, quick example, I didn't even know student affairs, higher ed was an actual career, because nobody came to career day when I was in high school saying, hey, you could be an academic advisor. Like, what? It was doctor, lawyer, police officer, fireman, whatever. So again, they may not know how to articulate like, okay, this is the actual job, but they know like, but I really like this. I like to draw, or I like to write, or I like public speaking. So that's the way the work interest assessment helps the student gauge what types of careers would match up with the types of activities that they like to do. So again, I didn't start this assessment, so I don't have results to show you, but once the student will go through there, it would kind of kick out at the end, well, based upon your work interest results, have you considered these types of careers, right? So then the student has a starting place to start researching. The values assessment, and I know Lori is going to talk about this a bit in terms of the career counseling conversations, but the values assessment will allow for you, the student, to really be able to think about not just the activity of work, but what is it that they value? Do they enjoy something, the type of work that allows them to make a personal impact on society? Do they like helping others? Is it important that, the field that they're in that has structure or order? Do they really value, when they're in an environment where they can have a voice, right? Or work autonomously? This really gets at those core values that a student has that can also help inform what types of professions might be a good starting place.
So Christina, real quick,
yes.
real quick, we do have some questions in the chat.
Sure.
Dr. Perone's asking about the personality assessment. It sounded like you were just about to talk about that one.
Yes.
Perfect. So we'll just hold on that. And then Teresa was asking, how long do each of these assessments usually take?
That's a good question. I mean, we try not to have the students take more than 10 minutes or so with these. Like, we don't want them to think too deeply, because then like it gets really hard for them to, when they start overthinking, it doesn't allow for them to have an honest, if I want to say, if that's the best word, assessment of where they really are. So a lot of times students may want to overthink it. When we've done this in some trial classes, some students have taken like 15, 20 minutes and they're like really struggling. So it's like, well, what does this actually mean? And sometimes, I value this, but other times I value that. And, so we try to have them just, in most cases, how would you respond to a question like this? This is what we try to prompt them to do, so that it takes no more than, I'd say, 10 to 15 minutes each assessment. But I mean, it's not timed, but you do, depending on how many of the assessments you want them to do at a time, it could take up a significant chunk of time, because as you can see, there are quite a few assessments.
Great, thank you.
So the personality assessment, I was getting ready to talk about that. So the personality assessment is just what it sounds like. It's going to ask students questions about, their personal comfort levels. So for each question, choose the response you most agree with, right? At a crowded social party, what are you more likely to do, right? Which types of projects are more appealing to you when learning something new? So this asks them to, and this is a good example of like, hey, don't overthink this. Just think, in most cases, how would you do at a crowded social party, right? Yeah, there are times that you're super comfortable and like, yeah, I'm great, right? But in more likely than not, are you someone that would really talk and stay with a group of friends, or circulate, meet, and talk with a lot of people, right? Because again, these types of knowing your personality will also help the student be able to better understand what type of work environments do they thrive in. Do they like something fast-paced, right? Do they like a lot of activity around them, whether it's in social settings, educational settings, or professional settings, right? Because more often than not, if you are someone that is like, I don't really like when it's too busy, I like something to be quiet so I can focus, and that for the most part across the board, that's how I am, then you're probably not going to like a job where day in and day out, it's an open office environment, you got phones ringing, people are asking you for meetings, it's so much activity, that's going to stress you out, right? And so you don't want professions that are going to require you to be in that type of environment. If more cases than not, that makes you uncomfortable, or it's not the way you optimally thrive at work. So that's what, a lot of these questions will gear toward. They're more kind of personal in nature, what type of organization would you like to work for? So, this can encourage students to think more about company culture as well, because that impacts your job search, that impacts your career field when you think about the types of environments that you feel most comfortable in. How do you explain to people that they did something wrong, right? So that gets at feedback, right? How do you best give feedback? How do you best receive feedback? Because again, all of these things can really help inform. So I did this assessment, so I'll just kind of go through to the end. And the results was, my personality type is that, I'm caring and understanding of the needs of other people. I enjoy working with people. My personal values play an important role in my work decisions. So I probably would need, the type of work that allows for me to really support my core values. I'm action oriented. My approach to work is flexible. So again, these are the kind of clues that a student has where it's like, okay, well, I probably then don't want to apply for a type of job that's very rigid and focused and, maybe not very people oriented, because at my core, that's really how I thrive. I love that kind of work. So again, this really just helps the student get more insight into how they really operate. Okay. So this is just a bit more here on, sort of summing up the results of the personality assessment. And then here, and again, I think Christina had shared a bit on the video, just it also matches to some occupations that the student might want to consider exploring. Okay. And I hope that answered your question, any questions you had about the personality assessment, but please feel free. Unfortunately, I can't see the chat, so let me know if there are any follow-up questions to that.
Yeah, thanks, Christina. So Dr. Perone just has a couple follow-ups about other kinds of that aren't in Focus 2, like for example, the Myers-Briggs or Campbell's Strong Interest Survey. Are those available to students as well, maybe through the advising office or anything like that?
So I'm gonna let Lori answered that question just because I know she's worked with career services at RCC a bit longer than me. Lori, do you know if those have been resources for students in the past?
So in the past, I definitely used a strong interested students. I'm not sure that license is still in existence. I would have to follow up on that. And the Myers-Briggs, I actually never used it. I've used fake free ones online, but I've never, with the college, I haven't used Myers-Briggs.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that it's not something we can explore. I just wrote a note that we can take that back to Joe Falco and see if there's maybe money to at least get a license or some type of resource for students in addition to this. So great question.
And certainly those are more in depth than anything Focus 2 would be doing.
Right.
So, strong interest has 300 questions or whatever. It's a lot longer.
Yeah.
And I think this might be a good moment to pause and remind everybody, first of all, most of us aren't trained as psychologists, right? I know Dr. Perone is, of course, but most of us aren't. Remember this, the course you're teaching, my friends. It's Introduction to the School, right? It's an introductory course. Everything you're doing in this course is an introduction. You're really not going deep on anything. And that's not the purpose of the course. One idea though here is to make sure that our students introduce themselves to themselves in a way, right? They're assessing themselves, they're getting a taste of that. They can always go back and do this again. They can always go and do more with their advisor. So don't feel too much pressure here. It's an introduction.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you for saying that. And, we certainly are willing to work with any student, on a one-off basis. If, they take this and they're really into this and really feel like they would benefit from further guidance, they can make an appointment with their student success advisor, and we're happy to get a bit more in depth, based on what the student needs. Great. Okay. So just wrapping up here with the assessment. So there's the skills assessment. And that, again, not one that I started myself, but you can see here, it more so just asks the student to select, what skills. So, again, it's based on their own assessment of themselves. Like, what are the top 3 skills that they have? Under people skills, communication skills, and problem solving, management. So they can kind of select, self-select these skills that they feel are kind of optimal for them. Again, just more data, more information for the students to take into consideration of what they really feel are their best skill sets or strengths, or, you know, if they find that, hey, the area that based on the other assessments I've taken, you know, I've narrowed it down to maybe a few professions, and I realize those professions require, you know, strong skill sets in these particular areas, and I'm not rating myself as very high. It either gives them an indication of maybe that profession's not a good option for them, or that here's where I need to really work on so that I can be proficient or I can be successful in that field. Okay. All right. So I think, then they have leisure assessment, which measures, the leisure assessment will measure what activities the student likes to do in their leisure time. Because again, you know, while of course we all would love, you know, to do what we love in terms of leisure activities, maybe we're not always able to do that, but it doesn't mean that those things can't inform our career decisions. If we like to draw, we like to paint, or, you know, we're somebody that likes to, we're music inclined, or, you know, whatever the case may be, you know, they taking into consideration what they like to do in their leisure time might also inform, you know, what they might want to do career-wise. And I won't go through this just because I know Christina covered this, but students can combine for themselves any number of these assessments that they've taken, and it'll also kick out career options based on a combination of different assessments. And I think she may have covered this, but we also have this available where students can take a look. Again, it's really helpful for students that are either undecided or maybe they're not happy with their current program of study. You know, what can I do with a major in? What can I do if I majored in? You can explore different occupations, compare occupations, and kind of do a little bit deeper. And then there is also an option around college search, because of course we know a good number of our students will go on to transfer, right? And what should they consider there? I won't go over this because I know Christina already covered that. Yeah, so those are in a nutshell the assessments. Any questions? Okay, if none, I am going to continue sharing my screen only because I have Lori's slides up here. She's going to take us through just some basic conversation around tips for having career counseling conversations. We're going to kind of decode the Holland Code quite a little bit, and then we'll go into some Q&A. Oh, no, I'm sorry. We will hand it back over to you, Katie, who's going to talk about how this all fits in ITTS. So I'm going to continue sharing my screen, but I'll mute myself then. So take it away, Lori.
Thanks so much, Christina.
Great. Thank you so much, Christina. Yeah, we'll start right off with the Holland Code. Yeah, we wanted to give you some perspective on, we're looking at these results. Okay, great. What do we do from here? And one of the things I know that Chris Baziel wrote in the chat box, well, what if they get stuff that they don't, you know, oh my God, it doesn't say that they should do this. Well, I would always caution with any assessment. Sometimes I say to students, like, this could be a total dud. We're just gonna try this out. You know, it might not come up with stuff they like. I've had students where they're like, absolutely none of these. So we have to go in a different direction because maybe Focus 2 wasn't the thing that was going to yield what we wanted it to yield. So I did want to make that point right up front. And I'm actually going to talk about a little bit of these nuances as I go through some of these Holland codes. So realistic is actually, these basically based on career theory by the psychologist John Holland, and the realistic types, they tend to be people who have athletic ability, people who prefer to work with objects, machines, tools, plants, or animals, but that doesn't mean that everybody who likes to, who's an athlete wants to be an athletic trainer. So these are things that we really have to tease out and figure out what belongs in their actual occupation and what might not. Investigative people are thinkers, people who like to observe, learn, investigate, analyze. So sometimes this tends to be your scientific minded people. Artistic is another perfect example. They're creators, they're people who like to observe, have artistic and innovative ideas, but they just may be brainstormers. It doesn't mean they're supposed to be artists, but sometimes it might. So we have to have these follow-up conversations to figure out exactly where is this going. Your social types are people who like to work with people. They tend to be your teachers, your counselors. They like to train. And then you have enterprising, which I also find particularly interesting because these are your politicians. They are also your salesmen, they might be your entrepreneurs. And so you can see how that would be a little bit different, right? Because they're all slightly different. I have a little bit of E in me, and I'm always like, how does that happen? I can't sell a phone book. I can't do anything. I'm really not great with anything like that. However, there's a small part of me that might want to help with a fundraising event, and I've done those things in the past. So it's important to try to find where those nuances might be. Conventional people who like to work with data have a clerical or numerical ability. Christina Merriweather probably has a little bit of conventional in her because she's so organized and is a spreadsheet girl. So that's something that we want to keep in mind. Again, very, very nuanced, and everybody tends to be a combination of these things. So we don't want to just, kind of say, oh, he's a this, that's it, it's over. He's meant to be a computer programmer. That's not the way these things work, especially because we are all combination of these different things. So yeah, so we're just going to walk you through a case scenario, and this person could, be walking into student success, but they might be in your class as well. So Damian Winter, he takes Focus 2. He tends to wear, sports attire. His Holland code is RSC. The counselor, or you as a professor might say, hey, he's definitely a sports guy. But we don't necessarily want to lump him in. What can we ask? What can we figure out? And we might be just looking at his profile, right? Because we might be stuck doing all our sections online, and we might just want to ask him a bunch of questions. So what can we see right from that? We might say, do you actually want to pursue sports as part of your occupation? Or do you on the side just want to help coach somebody? Do you just want to go one-on-one and play, on the weekends? So how much do you like helping people, right? So there's a little bit of a social, in him. So let's see, what are we seeing? Do you consider yourself a salesman? Because we see the enterprising piece. Or how would you consider yourself? How do you view yourself? So would you want to open up your own business one day? These are all different questions that we can use just off of the assessments can give you all of that information and more. So it's good to just use it as a starting point. So we're going to drop down to another case scenario. So Susie seems to be good at a lot of things and likes a lot of different subjects. And her Holland code says she's SAE, but she says she doesn't like the occupations that are popping up at all. So close examination of her results, you see that she's barely differentiated. Her scores are like the exact same thing. Well, if that's the case, then she can easily be like RIC or anything else. So that's an example where the Holland code, while the occupations that are yielded may not be anything that she likes, because she likes a million different things, or she doesn't like a million different things. So you have to dig a little bit deeper. Sometimes in that case, I might just ask a whole bunch of questions and get my own Holland code and pop over to Career Zone and pop it in and say, okay, so you don't want this to be part of your occupation, but you want this to be part of your occupation. So there's different things. Again, you're going to go down to asking questions and really teasing it out. Yeah, so that's another scenario that might happen. So with the interesting thing is a lot of people do use their interests to pursue their careers, but other people might really at some point in their lives or right from the beginning choose as values as being their most important thing. I like to use myself as an example. I was in children's book publishing, loved art, loved reading, whatever, loved writing, all that fun stuff. But at some point I felt this need to I really have to help people. It doesn't necessarily do anything to help be part of this process. And it wasn't actually, my piece of the puzzle wasn't creative enough. So I then made that decision, I want to give back, I want to help people, and I'm going to switch. And my priorities kind of shifted and values started to play a little bit more of a role. So that's something that you want to keep in mind. Now, also with the values assessment in Focus 2, it is somewhat limited. They have a choice, but they're only picking 3. That can be very challenging. So they may hem and haw a little bit. You may also want to ask them, oh, are you having trouble with this piece? Or did you have any trouble with these things? So also Lumen, as far as I could see, seemed like they had a little bit more of a in-depth, assessment, or some of the things that were linked attached to that. So there's ways to kind of go more in depth than what Focus 2 has. Or you might just say, hey, try another 3 because you didn't yield any occupations. Let's see what some other, your next top go-getters and values were. So let's see if that helps you find something that's a little bit more of a concrete occupation based on that. So that's values. And then skipping along, very similar with skills. There's a limited amount of skills that are in Focus 2, but you also can take a look at the one that says, oh, I do all right in those subjects. Christina can probably remind me what that is. You can use a combination of that, but also look at their academic record and have a real heart-to-heart. We often see students who are interested in one thing and they don't have the aptitude. So that's a conversation that you want to have. So it's always good to look at their academic record as well, just as a starting point. So you always want to try to develop some sort of a framework for students. A helpful strategy is to help students brainstorm possible occupations. So I might start with Focus 2, but then I might say, ask your family and friends. They don't factor into the final decision because it's your career, but they may envision you a certain way. Maybe we can ask them, hey, what do you see me doing? Caution students to be very open-minded during that phase. Students tend to rule out things that they don't know enough about. Oh, I can't do that. They travel too much, but you don't know because you didn't actually look into it. So you want to make sure that they are keeping this open mind as they go forward. And once they have a decent amount of occupations, they can start to narrow it down. So you can give them homework assignments, or you might say, you know what, this is out of the scope of the class, go to your advisor and start doing some weekly assignments there. So we don't need to get bogged down, but we want to also make sure that we're doing the right thing for the student. Yeah, so once you have like some viable options, this is great. I mean, towards the end of IttS, this would be great, or even in the beginning with joining a club, but registering for a course the next semester with a service learning component for something that you've decided is an interest area, or find out about internship opportunities, engage in community service or volunteer activities. These are all great ways to kind of create a career action plan for students based on some of their areas of interest that they have figured out. So, you want to just move? Sorry. This is what happens when I don't share the screen myself. I'm a wimp. I am afraid with Zoom that I'm going to mess it up. So the issues with perception of certain occupation, family dynamics and perception of family and friends can often play a large role. Certain cultures hold specific occupations in high regard. Sometimes students have certain preconceived notions of certain jobs. I know, like with myself, growing up with, my dad was a history teacher, and I would look at him and I was like, oh God, this is so much work. I'm never, ever going into teaching. Like, he would work all the time, testing, grading, scheduling, all these things. Well, and also, often our experience are, okay, we have a great experience with a businessman. Oh my God, that guy is the nicest guy. He's so honest. Or maybe the opposite. So we automatically may even answer assessments based on not wanting to get it. Just like doing BuzzFeed, you want to be a specific Muppet, you're going to answer the question so you get Fozzie Bear. So people do that even with occupations. So you want to make sure, you want to be mindful of these preconceived notions and make sure that they have accurate information and they're not going off those preconceived notions. So the interesting thing here is a lot of times it's not always about career counseling, right? It's about making a decision. Who likes to make a decision? It's complicated, and especially students, they feel like this is like such an important decision. So you really want to break down the task a little bit for them. It might help students to see that they can make the decisions in increments. You know, you don't need to know right now, you know, I don't know, where you're going to go and everything. 20 years from now, we don't need to know this. We need to know what major. That's your first step, right? What experiential activities might be next? Maybe we want to explore even more degrees or explore job opportunities, and everybody's going to be in a different place. So depending on where everyone is, you might give them the next action step based on where they are. So, and some of the times you want to go back to basics. Identify how they make decisions. You know, who or what typically influences your decisions? How have they made successful decisions in the past? That's such an important thing. Okay, let's think about the best decision you ever made in your life. Oh, you know, yeah, that was the first one I made for me, you know, and you realize you pointed out and all of a sudden they're not as afraid. I didn't mess up that decision, so I'm not going to mess up this one. So how do they order their meals in a restaurant? It sounds really basic, right? But sometimes you'll hear, oh yeah, I always wait and see what everyone else does. Oh, but I always go for something that's new because whatever the waiter says is good, I really trust him. Or, you know, we have these certain things, the way that we make decisions can really impact things. And also, what is their risk tolerance, right? So there's so many different ways to approach the decision-making process. So you also want to, so after we break down the decision and identify how to make the decision, we want to kind of free them up a little bit, right? Remind them that people make subtle changes in their career all the time. Sometimes people change courses after their associates, or they might do it at the bachelor's level, or their master's, or they might build on it, right? Every single degree may lead them to that final place where they open the restaurant, where they use the culinary experience. I see that all the time. Like, oh my God, they used every single degree they had and look where they are now. And they didn't know that necessarily at the starting point. So some people make logical career choices throughout the course of their lives. And it's important to just arm the students with resources. And yes, go the next step if you feel like you need to. It's just basically, for IttS, I mean, I think it would be great to either point them to student success or come up with a weekly or monthly, whatever kind of plan you want to come up with that you think works. That's pretty much. Any questions? That was just kind of like a brief overview. Oh, right. One last thing, the key points, forgot about that. Not all the occupations are mapped. This is actually really important. Because of programming limitations, we couldn't map every single RCC major to an occupation. So something like that's a very specific science track, it might come up as no RCC major. You want to make sure that you are pointing them into the right direction. So you want to say, oh, you know, liberal arts, you know, humanities and social sciences, or math science, those are some good starting points. Remember that assessments like Focus2 are only the beginning of the process, and they're only self-assessments. They're very, very limited. And informal assessments and career resources can be extremely useful, and we absolutely can point you in the right direction of any of those things should you want them.
Lori, thank you so much. If there's any other questions, you know, please feel free to type them in the chat, or you can unmute and ask. Okay. It
So
looks
I'll
like
stop sharing my screen then, unless.
And if you wouldn't mind giving host back to me, that'd be great.
Okay, let me just figure out how to do that.
It's over in participants. You just click more and you can make me the host. So I really want to, you know, at this point, I want to just pause and thank both Christina Schaudel and Christina Merriweather and Lori Pearl for everything they did for this training. I mean, you know, this is fantastic. And we so appreciate all your hard work and everything all the time that you've given today. So we're reaching kind of the end of our session together, my friends. So we just have a few more minutes where we're going to think about how do we use this tool that you've just learned so much about in the class. And both Lori and Christina alluded to some ways you can do it. There is no one size fits all answer to this. There are some points where it makes sense to use Focus2 in the class, and then you may come up with other points as you're teaching the class. But just remember, all students should have done the Focus2 assessments during their onboarding process, but it's likely that some of them will not have done anything, and some of them will only have done a few of the assessments. Okay, so that's one thing to remember. The other thing to remember is that during the first week of the course, and this is something that we are going to ask you to do, ask everybody across all the different versions of this course to do. You're going to give your students an assignment to reflect on their assessments that's due right away in that second week. Okay, so if a student has not yet completed their assessments, they're going to need to do that in order to do the reflection. Now, this assignment will be given to you, okay? You can certainly, tweak it a little bit, but we're gonna ask you to mostly use the same kind of assignment through all of our sections of IttS, okay? The other thing to remember is that you are gonna have students in your school. So, this is not, I know it's a little bit daunting to think about, oh my gosh, I'm a biology major. What if I'm talking to a student who's interested in art? Okay, that's very unlikely to happen. It could happen, but it's very unlikely to happen because students are going to be put into schools based on their identified, areas of interest that they identify when they apply. And you are going to be teaching an intro course to your school, not to someone else's school, to yours. So most of the students in the class should be interested in something that you already know a little bit about because that's the school you're teaching in. Okay, so again, don't feel too daunted here. This is an introductory moment for you and your students. This is a moment where they're just starting to think about, what do I want out of my academics? What do I want out of my employment? How do I start making plans for that? Okay. So again, I know that some of us right now might be thinking, I have no training whatsoever in any kind of counseling, in any kind of advising. I don't know what to do with all this information. It will be all right because you are just helping them get started as they reflect on their own choices in terms of major, career, values, identity, etc. The advisors are always here to back you up. Okay, you've seen 3 of them today, Christina, and Lori. There are many more, and they are affiliated with each school. So if a student is really struggling with this, one piece of advice would be, hey, I think you should go talk to your advisor, and that's always a good point to bring up to the student, is that we've got lots of support for you as you start to work on these plans that you're making. As Stephen just said in the chat, if you are a member of the School of Arts and Humanities and you're thinking about teaching that class, those students may actually be completely undecided. That is the school where if a student comes into RCC and says, I have no idea what I want to do, they by default go into the School of Arts and Humanities. So it is possible that as a School of Arts and Humanities teacher, you may encounter students who are more undecided or who have a larger variety of interest than in the other schools. Certainly students can change their school. So if you've got a student who thought they were interested in chemistry, but they end up being interested in business, that student can change their school, their advisor can help. What I want you to know is that you're not alone in this, okay? You as the IttS teacher are part of a broader team. You're part of a team that includes advisors and deans and the Connection Center and counselors and everybody, right? So there's lots and lots of ways to support our students. Before I move on to the next slide, do you have any questions about what the students will hopefully have done before they enter your classroom and the fact that IttS is acting as a catch-all? So if a student hasn't done these assessments yet, they need to do them as part of IttS right away. And if they have done the assessments already, they'll be reflecting on them. And they can always repeat those assessments. Are there any questions about that?
No, all clear.
Okay. If there are, let me know. You can always put them in the chat. You can always follow up later if you'd like. So let's move forward. When we do this reflection assignment, and again, you'll be receiving information about this reflection assignment, so there's no need to try to write it yourself. When you have students do the reflection assignment, it's not going to be lengthy. We're not asking them to do 3, 5, 10 pages of reflection. It will be a brief assignment, and it's going to pair very well with Module 2 in the ITTS course. Module 1, if you'll recall from our June training, if you could be with us that day, Module 1 is not a graded unit. It's all about learning how to use Waymaker. Module 2 is the first unit that includes one of those quizzes, okay? And that module is called Motivating Success. This is a really good module to pair with a reflection on the Focus2Career assessments, because part of that unit, Motivating Success, involves thinking about identity and values, which tie into a lot of the assessments that the students will either have taken already and reflect on, or they'll be taking and then reflect on. Okay, so that's why we're asking you to have the students complete the Focus2 assessments and reflect on them right away in the course. Okay, but that's not the only time that Focus2 will be useful. Focus2 will also be useful during the module on career exploration, at which point, students will be thinking about what sort of careers they really want to enter, and they'll be learning some skills for how to do that. Okay, and that's a module in Waymaker, in Lumen's text. You don't have to come up with that material. That material already exists in the textbook. And so when they're thinking about career exploration during that module, I would suggest bringing back Focus2. You don't have to have them do anything, right? Because they will have already done the assessments and they will have already done the reflection. But you can remind them to look at their Focus2Career results during that module on career exploration. Okay, and I just want to pause for John's comment. John said, I was glad you cleared up the focus of ITTS for me. I was a little worried about encountering students that were conflicted, and knowing that the idea would be to bump it up to an advisor is what I was hoping for if it became necessary. Absolutely, John, absolutely. Again, the vast majority of us in this meeting are trained in an academic discipline. I'm trained to teach medieval English literature. I have no training except on the job to do any kind of career counseling, but this is increasingly part of the work we need to do as community college faculty. And so thanks to Lori and Christina and Christina, we have the opportunity to start to dip our big toe into this space where we can support our students as they, think about their careers. We might not be the experts, we can still help them, right? We all have gone through the process of launching a career, and maybe more than one. And then we can always refer them to the advisors as they need more assistance. So great, thank you for that comment, John. Now, the last part of the course where students are going to need to think about Focus2 is when they're creating their education plan. I shared an education plan in the first training, and I might do so again today just to give you a sense of what we're looking for. Joe Falco and I are together modifying the education plan, okay? So it will actually probably be a Google form that students will need to fill out toward the end of the ITTS course. But that Google form is going to ask them to refer back to Focus2 and their results in Focus2. So again, there's 3 points here where the students will absolutely need to think about Focus2. Right at the beginning, when they're doing those assessments, if they haven't done them already and they're reflecting on them, in the career exploration module, and when they're developing their personalized education plan. The power of that plan is that once they've developed it, a student can then take that plan to their advisor and continue working on that plan for the rest of their time at RCC. But they start making that plan in your course toward the end of it, okay? I'm gonna pause again for any questions. Let me show you, here's a little funny questions slide with Yoda. Who doesn't love Yoda? And some thank yous. By the way, in addition to Christina, Lori, and Christina, I want to thank Janita Sanchez, who was instrumental in organizing this training. So thank you very much. And let me do one more thing. Let me share the version of the educational plan that I came up with. Some of you have seen this before, and this isn't going to be what it looks like for the fall, but I just want to show you a little bit of the kinds of information that we're hoping students will come up with. So this was my pilot Honors 101 course. Again, some of you have seen this already. I'm going to share a slightly different plan with you. This pilot version had an experimental iteration of the personalized education plan. It won't be done in a Google Doc for you, so don't worry about the formatting, but the kinds of questions we're asking are things like, what is your current career goal, right? And that's going to require them to not only think about their career goal themselves, but maybe to go back and look at what they saw in Focus 2. I had one student who was like the second student that Lori mentioned. She had no idea what she wanted. She just had no idea. And when she took assessments that we had, she got mixed results, just like the example Lori offered. So what I said to her was, I said, okay, let's say you don't have a current career goal. Just pick something and run with it, just to see what that thing that you picked would sort of entail in terms of your plan. Okay. But they're going to describe a current career goal. They're going to research that career goal. I had my students do it using the Bureau of Labor Statistics because we did not have Focus 2 at this particular point. And they looked up, what is the median pay for their field? What is the job outlook for their field? Then I had them think about, are there any specific companies or organizations that you'd like to work for, right? Because knowing that can help you plan to maybe try to get an internship at one of those places at some point, or a place that's similar to that. Then we talked about, there was a question about what kind of education do you need, right? Do you need a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a PhD, an MD, a JD, right? What is it that you need? If your education requires a bachelor's degree, what kind of institutions are you thinking about transferring to? This is important because a student who's attempting to transfer to a very challenging institution, as Emmeline is, right? She's got Wellesley and Columbia, and University of Chicago and NYU and Trinity College in Dublin and Georgetown. Those are really difficult schools to get into. So she needs to know what those schools are going to require early on so that she can prepare herself and make, some strong academic choices as she pursues that goal of transferring to one of these top schools. Then we link it back to RCC, right? What kind of degree at RCC is going to prepare you, okay? And that leads to investigation of degrees. What are degrees at RCC? How are they different from a bachelor's degree, right? There's all kinds of conversations that come up when we talk about, degrees at RCC versus degrees elsewhere. Then there's a question about extracurricular activities because, these top schools that Emmeline's applying to, they're going to want to see more than just excellent academics. They're going to want to see that she's involved in the community, that she's involved on campus. Moreover, we want that for every student because we know that the more involved a student is, as long as they're not overdoing it, but when a student is involved, they feel more connected to the college and they generally do better, which is really impressive. Now, a student may not be able to be involved on campus because of work, because of COVID, because of whatever, right? But we want to get them thinking about what are the kinds of extracurricular activities, jobs, internships, volunteering, clubs, etc., that you can do to support your plan, okay, and your goals. How are you going to pay for your education? This is a really important question that not all students think about. There is a section in the Lumen text that focuses on financial planning. You do not need to make that information up. It's going to be delivered to the students. The student will learn about credit. They'll learn about scholarships and loans and fellowships and the distinctions between all of those different kinds of financial aid, right? The book will teach them this. And then they need to also, figure out, okay, well, given what I've learned, what is my plan to pay for everything? Okay. And then finally, what questions about your chosen career, your educational path, and your financial plans do you still have? This question may not be answerable by you. This is where I would lean very heavily on our wonderful advising colleagues. And I would say, so-and-so is a student in my class and she's got a question that unfortunately I really have no idea how to answer. I'm directing her, who's CC'd to this message, to reach out to you for an appointment. Okay, the advisor will also have access to the plan in its final form when it's a Google form. So the advisor will be able to see it so that they can continue to support the students beyond the IttS course. Remember, IttS is going to be a 7-week course. It's either the first 7 weeks of a semester or the second 7 weeks of a semester. So after that point, the student goes on to continue to refine this plan with their advisor. Diana has a question, a couple questions in the chat. First of all, can a student who has not yet applied to the nursing program, who is a first-year student and working on the prerequisites, can they take the first-year seminar in nursing, health, and wellness? Diana, that's a great question, and I don't quite know.
I think I can answer that. I'll confirm with Kathy, but my understanding is yes, they are able to take the IttS course just as they would be able to take any other gen ed course, even prior to applying and being accepted into the nursing program. So IttS shouldn't be any different.
Great, thank you, Christina. And Diana, thank you for that question. We'll confirm with the Dean, Dr. Hopkins. What other questions do you have? Because we have reached the conclusion of what we came to do here today. So the rest of this is just your questions and anything else that the trainers involved want to share with you. As you're thinking about your questions, just a reminder, the next training session is going to be held next week on June the 30th. I will send out invitations to that training no later than tomorrow. There will be the same format where you'll register for a brief, an hour and a half long meeting. Okay, it won't be 2.5 hours like our June 2nd meeting was. And in that meeting, we're actually going to talk about, in that workshop, we're going to talk about what the content of the course is. And we're also going to talk about, some of the strategies for classroom activities. Okay, so that's the final official training, because of course we know that many of us are not on contract in July and August. So we wanted to squeeze this training in before the month of June ended. Now, does that mean that you're just cut loose and you have no support for your ITTS course? Not at all. Okay, first of all, I'm always happy to help. Your dean is happy to help. And we are going to make sure that you're well taken care of. There will be little refresher sessions offered later in the summer, certainly in August. There will be plenty of opportunities to receive support as you are preparing to teach this course in the fall. So if there aren't any other questions, Stephen, anything to add from your perspective?
Not too much, Kat. Congratulations to everybody. Lori, Christina, thank you so much for just a tremendous. I think, yeah, we covered a lot of stuff, and I just want to reiterate what Katie said. This is really an intro for the students in the beginning. It starts them thinking about things. I mean, there are obviously a lot of big subjects that get raised about career and planning that, when you're a first semester student at a community college, you're obviously not ready to make those decisions. So I know just thinking about it and reflecting about how I would approach this with the students, I probably will share, some of the many permutations and changes that I've gone through in coming to and making career choices and all the differences that happened to me starting out when I was 18 to, where I am now. So just to give them some sense of all the things that's going to happen that you cannot possibly anticipate in your life. But I'm really excited that we're doing this at RCC. I think this is a great leap forward in helping students to succeed at RCC and beyond. Thanks, Katie.
Thank you. And Janida, because you were part of a really important part of organizing this session, any final words that you'd like to share?
I just want to say thank you to Lori, to Christina Merriweather and Christina Shadal, as well as you, Katie. Thank you for helping Stephen and myself as part of the Guided Pathways professional development team to develop this for all of the faculty that will be teaching the ITTS courses. So thank you to all of you, and thank you to everyone who is participating right now as well.
Great. Well, that's it, everybody. That's a wrap. I will stop recording now, and we will put the link to this session out to you if you'd like to review at any time. Thanks again to all of our trainers, and have a great rest of your day. Please stay safe, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great
Bye-bye.
day.
Thank you.